So welcome to, I guess, the last part of the chamber music videos for your classical period. This is talking about Mozart's Clarinet Quintet. Starts on page 182. And first thing it does is that this is under the heading of other kinds of chamber music groups besides the string quartet. Um, and it's where it explains that, for instance, a clarinet quintet is a string quartet plus a clarinet. These quintets were popular to write, and since string quartets were everywhere, this became your de facto accompaniment ensemble, although they play a more active role than that. The difference between like a clarinet solo backed up with a string quartet versus a clarinet quintet is that the every instrument in there, every person in the group, whether they're part of the string quartet or the soloist, in this case clarinet, are important. The parts are important and featured. Same thing when you look at a sonata. If you looked at like a flute sonata or a violin sonata, that is violin and piano. But in this case, with a sonata, the piano part is not considered just accompaniment. It's not about the violinist. The violinist um, is not the only featured player. It doesn't take all the bows and everything. They're considered co-equal parts. Um, that's an important distinction to make. For instance, if you are a soloist playing a sonata with the piano, right? So you're straight, an instrumentalist, and you're doing a blah 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 sonata, like named after your instrument, that's with piano. Um, you would traditionally, as a professional player, not play the music memorized, unless your pianist was also playing memorized as well, because pianists generally have way more notes and way more complex things, and they don't memorize their music. Some like like when you're doing just a featured solo, you do. Just like if you were a solo instrumentalist, you would memorize your music. But for a big long sonata like that, it's presumed that the pianist would not memorize their music, so the soloist or the other instrumentalist also would not play with the music memorized. Unless it's also inconvenient if the pianist is sitting down, if it's inconvenient for you to not stand as the instrumentalist part of that, then you would sit as well. Anyhow, um, similar with clarinet quintet or any quintet, the string quartet is not just an accompanying group, they're co-equal partners with the solo instrument or the solo named instrument, and so on. All right, now, what I want to do right here first, before we get into the music, is just show the sonata cycle. So the first thing that this does is it talks about the clarinet quintet by Mozart in A major, is when it wants to talk about it, it tells you, let's see, first movement is a sonata form. So this goes back to the original premise for this entire unit, that classical music and appreciating it and what they were driving at, apart from the sheer beauty of the music and the sort of just, for lack of a better word, hedonistic or sonic qualities of the music itself, right, was about form, right? Understanding what's going on. Look, in the second movement, it says, clarinet plays a beautiful melody. Okay, that's from that sonata cycle saying melodious and beautiful. But then it starts talking about B portions and A portions and things like that. It's talking about what's going on in different parts of the form. Third movement is an elegant sounded minuet and trio. Actually has two trios, okay, but it's still talking about a form. And when we get to the fourth movement here, it says the fourth movement, which is in the listening guide down here, is both a form and a process, theme and variations. So it's completely focused on what is the form. So that's why, as opposed to other units, we're focusing so much on hearing the theme so we can hear the forms and stuff like that. I just want to screen share you just for a second here. Let's go look at our sonata cycle handout right there. This is that thing that we sort of showcased the other day. And look, first movement is the sonata form. Next movement is a simple ABA kind of thing, like the one in this, or it could be a theme of variations. It's going to be slower to give contrast, and its main features are gorgeous melodies, right? Minuet and trio is that third movement, sort of a pick me up, say let's get going, and then finally at the last movement it'll be energetic. It will have a faster tempo, and it could be a rondo, it might be a theme of variations like it is here. So this is actually a very important sort of key to understanding what to expect when you listen to the various movements of classical music, whether it's this full symphony, string quartet, clarinet quintet, piano sonata, concerto. This is, you know, the sort of the important thing. Now, how are we going to talk about the theme of variations? So theme of variations is, well, it has a theme, and that's not just a single melody, but like a mini section or piece on its own. And we're going to spend some time listening to that here. And then every subsequent part of the piece is doing variation on that. So it's important to understand the original theme. And if you look here on your book, I'm going to go out of screen share for a second. It says, well, they have A and they have B. And so this theme actually has more than one section or duration. The entire theme is almost a minute long, right? So it's not just like one line. In fact, this particular theme of variations, although not all of them have to be this way, but this one here is pretty common, is a binary form, just like the minuet, except it's not in 3. This is set in cut time, so it's like 2, 1, and 2, and 1, 2, dun, dun. Sort of a bright, jaunty kind of thing. So, but the form is the same. Let's review what binary form is. We're going to have an opening section, right? And inside it's going to have, you know, A or beginning material. And then in the second half, it's going to have B or different material. Okay. And the job underneath the hood is to go from a home key to an away key. It's like visiting another place, right? And then to come back home, little vacation. Okay. And that's what's going on with chords and scales and things like that. On top, these represent the melodies and things you're hearing. The one thing about classical era binary pieces, beginning section, second section, or, you know, we actually give these larger A's and B's, large A and large B section, although they're not related. This is just naming sections. This is naming local stuff right here, is that this will have, in this case, 2 subsections in it, like an A section and then a variation on that. And this B section here will then take this and do that right there. It's called a rounded binary form. We're just going to steal this here and transport it over to there and copy it. Has a beginning section or an A section and a contrasting section or a B section. And inside here is the first material and then contrasting material. And for symmetry, for the aesthetics of the time, we're just going to take this, stick this over here. All right, so we should learn that. That's the goal of today's video. And then your assignment is to go through all the variations and to figure out what they're doing. And of course, that means listening to the piece. So let me go back to screen sharing here. And here I've got, again, slightly pitch shifted, slightly sped up. So it will fool, we hope, the YouTube algorithms. We're not breaking the law, but their algorithm doesn't understand that this is part of a textbook and part of a class, and we're only using a bit of it. So it indiscriminately locks. Here we go. So listen. Oh, wait, hold on. Maybe not. So here's our A. And there's the second part with a slightly different rhythm. Now we're going to repeat it because that's what binary things do. So that's that. And then there's that. Now, contrasting. But wait for it, because at the end of this is going to show up again. There we go. And because it's a binary piece, we like to repeat the section. So here we go again. And then piece is transported over here. Okay, and that's our piece. That's our theme, for lack of a better word. The mini piece is the theme on which we'll vary. And what will happen is we'll repeat this formula again and again, right? And each time some aspect of it will be varied, and that can be exciting to listen to or interesting to listen to, or I didn't think of it that way. It's a composer's playground. They get to try and say, well, what if we did it this way? What if we did it that way? I think the biggest challenge for the composer is to give you something that's going to be familiar, this format again and again and again, in a way that makes you go like, rather than again, right? So let's listen through this again, and then we'll go to the first variation, okay? Now the first variation is going to be exactly the same length. Everything's going to be the same, except in variation 1, okay? So variation 1, we're going to have the clarinet is going to play or adds a counter melody or a new melody on top. And the string quartet will continue to play the stuff that you heard the first time, but by adding a distinct new melody that fits over top, it gives us this in a new sort of value added kind of way. All right, we're going to go back and we're going to listen to these things, okay? But we're going to get into the first variation, and you're going to hear the form again a second time. Okay, so here we go from the beginning. Right there. And second half of it, different cadence or ending, so that's why we call it A and A prime for difference. Repeat the section. Hopefully you're hearing this now, and you can hear that that's the beginning of that again. Now we're going to this section, contrasting material. And this gets transported for the second half of the large B section. And now we'll repeat this again for balance. And there's the rounded binary ending. Now, this time through, variation 1, clarinet, it's playing something new, but if you listen closely underneath, string quartet's still doing the same thing. All right, and repeat. And second half of this large A section. Now, strings will go on their own for contrast. Clarinet's doing stuff as well. And then repeat the last little bit. And then we'll do this whole thing again. All right, B. And there. All right, and that's variation 1, okay? Let's have a quick look here. Variation 1, maybe I'll go out of screen share so it's bigger. If you're looking at your book, we just listened to variation 1, freewheeling melody, counter theme, or a new melody, okay? But as we turn over, let's have a look at this. Variation 2 plays an ornamented version of this theme. Ornamentation means to add extra notes and filigree and things like that. So you can dress up the existing theme with ornamentation or fancy extra notes and things like that. Variation 3, it changes to a minor key, and it's going to change the character because no longer is it happy, but it will be sad, okay? Tempo will also drop just a little bit there, and so on. Variation 4, transition, variation 5, etc. All right. Your job now will be to go and open up it's a quiz, but it's also a guided listening tour. So there'll be no time limit on the quiz. It'll stay open as long as you need to, but it's going to say, listen to this variation. Did you do it? Points. Okay. And then what is the method or the process by which Mozart varied the little mini piece? this time. And so you'll have to look at this and reflect on what it means, and there'll be some multiple choice answers and things like that. Now, I just want to point out, no, I want to make I guess a comment about this. I don't particularly love theme and variations, quite honestly. So for me, theme and variation songs like this tend to be like playing old video games. Like if you've ever played Pac-Man, the original Pac-Man or Ms. Pac-Man, you're running a little guy around a maze, right? And there's ghosts that are trying to catch you, and you're trying to get all the pellets, and sometimes fruit comes down. And then you finish the level, and what happens? Well, you get another level, and it's the same, except the ghosts are a little faster and a different kind of fruit comes around. If it's Miss Pac-Man, maybe the maze changes a little bit, but it's the same game. For me, theme and variations like this, they don't hold too much interest for me because the sections are all the same and it's really predictable. And this is a 9-minute fourth movement. That's pretty long, right? Now that's a personal preference. Other people will say, no, I love that because I can keep track of what's going on. And it's ingenious how the composer changes the theme or varies some aspect of it. And I like that too, truly. But for me personally, I like a piece that grows and stretches and transforms in more organic ways. That doesn't mean I don't appreciate or like theme and variations. But for me, there's a certain monotony to having it exactly the same length and shape for each section. And that's just, we want some variation on our variation. Mozart does too. Let me point out just a couple little things before I leave you here. When he changes to the minor key, this goes a lot slower, right? So by doing that, then the piece stretches out a little bit longer. So he's changing the shape or the size of it all the way along, right? When he gets to this part right here where it says 5/16, it says a transition to the next variation begins. He recognizes that he's got to change okay, it's just another one of these. It's just another one of these. So he writes some new music that is neither theme nor variation to give us a little bit of a respite and to change the architecture of the musical landscape. Here in variation 5, it says play a slow moving figure heard in second variation. It's really, really long if you look at it here, because the tempo is drastically slowed down, almost so much that you don't hear it as the same song. So Mozart is aware of perception issues, of course. He's this genius composer, and he's working inside the theme and variations to address some of those issues. Even then, he has a link, and then he has a coda at the end, right? Which is a tail, which is something different. So inside the theme and variations, which is at its heart is to play a small piece in this case, and then do variation processes on it, composers are also free then to write transitional pieces, links, change drastically the tempo or something about it so that the shape is different, write extra sections like a coda, which is a tail or an ending section and things like that, all to make it be not just intellectually interesting, but also aesthetically satisfying. Not all theme and variations will be the same. However, the ones that are in here represent some of the main ways that composers do like to vary their music. So as you go through here on this quiz you're going to take, it's going to say, listen to this section of the music. Did you do it? Yes or no? Points. But then it's going to say, what's the thing going on here? And what's the effect of that? And so in this way, it's sort of a guided listening, not just like, oh, look at the listening guide, but asking you questions, having you listen and break it apart. Of course, after you've done all that work, you should know the piece really well, and you should enjoy the fact that you could listen to this entire movement without a listening guide and probably keep track of where you're at. Okay? All right, have fun with that, and I will see you on the next lecture as we talk about, I think, piano music, and that leads us to Beethoven, and then everything goes crazy at that point.